Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Mike Ames Recruitment Show. I am super excited about this. It's going to be great. As you can see, we are going to be having a live debate, the 360 versus the factory recruitment models. As you can see, I am wearing my stripy top because I am the referee to the person in the blue corner, which is one and only Mike Ames. Hi, Mike. Look at him. Absolutely magnificent. And in our red corner today, we have Gavin. How are you doing, Gavin?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Okay. Mike, can you talk a little bit about why it is that we've got Gavin on the show today?
Sure. Gavin's, I think, 18 years in recruitment, I think, and now is a trainer for 360 recruiters, teach them the process and the skills that they need. Obviously, a very, very big supporter of the 360 model. And we just got into a conversation about it, and I thought it would be great for him to come on the show and talk about it. And he very kindly has offered to do that. So I thought he would be a really good defender of a basically massively flawed process. So there you go.
The best approach to talking about.
That was a left hook straight away.
Mike's getting in there early, right? So just to explain to the viewers about how this is going to happen today, we're basically going to let them sort of duke it out. If you have any comments, if you have any questions that you want me to put to them, if you want to put a little cat amongst the pigeons, please feel free to put them in the comments and I will bring them up. Gentlemen, I want a clean fight, nothing below the belt, or considering we're on this today, nothing below the nose. I want respect, but I also want fireworks. That's not too much to ask. So
it's what the people want. Give the people what they want.
So to begin with, what I want a very quick summary about your chosen factory, your chosen model. So Gavin, let's start with you. Can you give me a very brief reason as to what 360 is?
Okay, 360 is basically 360 degrees. You've got one recruiter who sees everything around them, and they do sourcing, client contacts, sales, client acquisition, and they're at the center of everything, which is a fantastic thing.
Very succinct. Thank you very much, Kevin. That was excellent. And Mike, now to you. Can you explain to us what a factory model is?
Or the right way of doing it, as we call it, as you and I call it, obviously. Yes, a factory simply means that just like Henry Ford recognized that engineers can build cars, it just takes ages. And if the engineers leave, there's no cars being built. He broke it down into specific parts so that somebody could become an expert at that thing, that aspect of building a car. And of course, you need to be able to link the different bits together to make them work well. But when you do that, half the cars on the planet were built in Ford factories by 1927 because it is the most successful way to get anything done. So
that worked well 100 years ago.
It certainly was 100 years aago, yes. Everybody else caught up and did it better than him. Often happens.
Yeah, that's what it's called, 360 degrees.
Yeah, well, the 360s, it was very popular back in the 1800s, I believe. But the three principles, let me bring these up, and then I'm gonna say, I don't have the time to do this properly. We are doing a webinar, a proper full-hour webinar, just on the factory model that will be probably in January now. I think it was going to be in December, but anybody that's watching this that would like to come, just drop me an email. Just put in the subject line factory, and I'll know what that means, and I'll just invite you to the webinar. No big deal. Okay, three principles of a factory, whatever it is, whether it's building cars or whether it's building, whether it's recruitment, is division of labor. So you get somebody to be really good at one thing, and if they leave, well, it's just that function that goes, not a whole revenue stream. Tool up to skill down, very keen on using tools to make people more efficient, more effective, and to de-skill processes. And lastly, very much on data management. If you don't have proper data management, if you manage by proximity or hearsay, won't work. If you manage by data, definitely will work. So there you have it.
Okay, fantastic. So I think the way that we've spoken about this before, there's some real headings around recruitment, especially when it comes to choosing your desired model. So let's first look at how it affects the people, how the people affect the model that we choose. So Gavin, let's start with you. How does a factory model, how does a 360 model, work with the people in it?
Okay, so you got the recruiter, you've got the candidate, you've got the client. And in all three cases, the great advantage of the 360 degrees recruiter is that person is in the middle of everything. I think we've all played that game where we were very young kids and you go stand in a row and you whisper a message into everybody's ear. And of course, what happens, the last person never hears the message of the first person. And that's a bit the problem when you do not do 360, is that there are multiple people involved. And so a 360 recruiter will stand in the middle, will talk to the client, hear everything about the client, understand the client, then we'll go and look for the right candidate. We'll be able to pass the information from the client on in the best way possible, but we'll also pick up the information from the candidate in the best way possible. And so the matching is of a much higher quality, but maybe even more important for agency owners who listen to us now, you've got the whole thing about lead generation. I have always generated a lot of leads from candidates, just listening to them and hearing what they've said, who they've been approached to, what they know about the market. I mean, they are the market at the end of the day. And so you can never do that in a factory model because you do not have everything really imbricked together.
Okay, fantastic. Mike, it's your time for a rebuttal.
Much to Kirsty's dismay, I sadly agree with what just Gavin said. So
this isn't what I want, guys.
However, well, some of what he said. Okay, most, in fact, of what he said. Yes, you're very true. But let's look at the people from the beginning, right? It's hard to find really good 360s. We all know that, right? They are really difficult to find. And if you were sitting in your office right now, looking at a really good 360 recruiter, chances are you're looking at the future competition there. In the same way that if you started your business up, as Gavin did, as I did, you were a really good 360. I can do it all, right? So the chances of losing really good 360s is very much higher. And that's across the piece. Everybody knows that. It's accepted. They go, they take a big chunk of revenue with them. They're hard to find. They're hard to make. People say they're 360s, but they're not. So you've got a model which depends upon a 360 and the person in it isn't, although even though they've said that they actually are, the whole thing is flawed around people. Added to that, I know for a fact, because we did some work on it, one of the biggest reasons that people leave recruitment agencies is that they're expected to do things, namely business development, that they're not very good at. They say they are, of course, because they needed to get the job, but they're not very good at it. So they leave because they're trying to do something they're not very good at, or they're asked to leave because they're not delivering the results. In a factory model, you're only hiring for maybe one or two functions. You don't, in a small business, obviously a person's going to do more than one thing, but you're probably very focused on one thing. You can not only become very much better at it, but also if someone leaves, that function leaves and it's relatively simple to replace. Revenue stream doesn't necessarily go with them, particularly if you've productized, which is one of the tools I was talking about earlier. A product is a tool to de-skill the process. So people are, okay, there is a communication challenge to be overcome, which you can overcome. We've done it before. One of the people I'm hoping is going to come on the webinar has basically doubled his profits, so 7-figure profits now, on 10 less people than when he was a 360 shop, like massive productivity, and a huge proportion of that because his attrition, his staff attrition has dropped to like a less than 2% a year, I think it is. So I think in people, it's easier to find factory workers. It's easier to train them because they're very focused on one thing. It's easier to keep them, and it's easier to give them a career path because there's lots of things that they can move into as they move forward. There isn't just the 360 and that's it. There are lots of things that they can do.
Okay, Gavin, would you like to come back on any of that?
Of course,
yeah, on everything, because I think everything is actually quite wrong. Look, we are recruiters, so if we cannot find the right people to do whatever we need, whether it's 360 or a good accountant for ourselves, we should be able to identify the right people. That's number one. The second thing is and it's a very sad thing. Now, don't forget, I'm a trainer on this, but it's a very sad thing that most recruitment agencies are absolutely useless when it comes to training their people because they do not invest enough time and they do not invest enough money into training their people. So the factory model is actually easier, also from a training point of view, because you would tend to take people who have got less bandwidth and who are already specialized in a specific area. Whereas 360, there's a lot more training to be done, even though it can be trained, these people can be trained up faster. The next thing I think is, in 2004, I started working for a recruitment agency that did only 360. And I'm the new guy that's left. and we're so many years later. So I think it comes down to having the right corporate culture, the right management, the right EVP. And if you, I'm using your terms, Mike, and if you do that well, there is absolutely no reason why your star performance should leave. And there's something else I'd like to add on top of that, which is actually there are ways of making sure that the 360 degree is more interesting for your staff. For example, make sure your niche is very small and make sure that you all work in the same niche. A lot of people say, oh, I've got to start doing that. I've got to start doing that. I've got to start doing that. But if you actually all working together, it creates this dynamic, this enthusiasm, this competition against each other. If you add in there, then like great little sales competitions with beautiful prizes, everybody's like, yeah. And if you create that, why would anybody leave?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because again, the guy that I'm always going to come on the show has stopped all of that, doesn't need it anymore. That whole thing with the holidays and everything.
You're going to have fun when you're
it doesn't need it. People work in the factory model because they really like what they do when they go to work every day. They get paid high basic salaries and much lower commissions because that's not a motivator. And yet they're delivering this massive, huge amount of revenue, of profit, because the turnover of staff is a lot less. And we both know that a sample of one doesn't really count very much, really. There are lots and lots of companies where the turnover of staff is huge. I spoke to a guy today, one of my clients this morning, is interviewing somebody. This will slay you, right? Factory model, this lad's coming from. He's been there, I think he said 1 year, 4 months, and he's the longest serving member of the team. Right? It's very common to get a massive turnover of staff, particularly.
This is more about management, Mike. It says exactly why people like you and me are right.
No, you are right there. It's just that a lot of agencies are basically recruiters, not managers. That's the deal. And so unless you are prepared to manage your 360 staff, then it ain't going to fly, really, and people will leave. And as soon as you get bigger, you reach between 8 and 12 people. That's the kind of first turning point of a business. You outgrow your management strength. And if you don't restructure that at that point, that's when the wheels start to come off, that yo-yo company that we talked about several times. And I do think that in a factory model, because it's much more controlled and much more specific, you're getting people in who are a lot less talented individuals, but the team is a lot more talented, significantly more. In the same way than a football team, you're not going to get someone that's a great goalkeeper, a great defender, a great midfielder, and a great striker. Ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. It's just, well, you might, but there aren't that many of them. Whereas you can get each of those people to be really, really good if you just train them to do that thing. But in my experience, worked with over 100 recruitment companies around the factory model. In my experience, the majority of them that properly embrace it see a bounce in profits and reduction in turnover of staff and a good deal easier life, a lot less stressful. 100%.
I think I definitely agree with you when it comes to the management issue. And to our audience, I would say, whether you choose to go for 360 or factory has got nothing to do really about which one is the best, because they both have advantages and disadvantages. But what is important is that it works for you. If you want to have a situation where you are going to be more on the management side, and you're ready to do that, and you're ready to take that responsibility and really go in and manage your people, and of course, then you're looking for more effectiveness, higher revenue, then you go for 360. If you want to go for a situation where you are more, well, I still want to be doing my billing, I want to set up a structure, and then I want it to more or less manage itself with a kind of looking down on how it works, which, if I remember rightly from having seen just about every episode of your show this year, Mike, that's the way you like to manage your people. I would say that then you probably should go for the factory solution. I mean, you'll earn a bit less per employee, but it will be more cushy.
I don't think that's not the case. We measure contribution per employee. It's a really big metric for us. And the contribution, certainly if you go down the profit per employee route, which I think is a great metric for everybody to have, profit per employee. As a business gets bigger, when it's very small, the profit per employee as a 360 model is bigger. There's no question. As it gets bigger, as you reach that magic 6 or 7 people, then it flips. and the contribution that you'll get per person over the business becomes much higher with a factory. And the bigger the factory gets, the bigger that profit becomes. It's huge after a while because of the way in which it works, because you're not losing big chunks of revenue when someone goes, because you're not having to retrain, because you've not got people constantly being average at what they do, because you can't be good at everything. So you've got a business full of people who are average. They're average 360s. Most people are going to be average, let's face it.
The great news is the competition is also pretty average. So
yeah, they are. Yeah, absolutely.
You're trying it better than your competition, and you're getting great results.
100%.
Okay, guys, I am going to have to interrupt here. We're doing really well. I think we've covered money and people there. I am going to have to interrupt because I've got a couple of questions from somebody called John. And then I want to move on to client care and finally scalability. So it's going really well. And I would obviously let you guys work for a lot. So first question we've got from John, which is very clear accountability with 360. Does this change with the 180? And I'm definitely going to come to you in a second, Gavin. But first, he asked this question as well. There has to be a better term for 180 than factory. Now, Mike, I just want you to cover this one off before we get into it very briefly.
Yeah, the 180 thing, the factory isn't that. That's just saying they do certain thing. A factory is a full, complete thing. It's not just the recruiters. It's the way that marketing supports people. It's the way that your quality and your client outreach works. It's a whole thing that comes together, some of which, the bit in the middle of the recruiters. So the whole idea of the 270, the 180, the 90, I don't know really what that works. We don't do it that way. It's a role where people do certain things within the factory. Some of them are recruiters, some of them aren't. And it's really important to recognize that. It's not just the recruitment. The factory is much bigger. If you come along to the webinar, I'll go into that in a lot of detail. I'll explain exactly all the components, including the management and the control and everything that goes with it. Because it's a really good question, John. Thank you for that.
So, John, now we're coming back to your original question, John. Now, guys, I want this to be a fairly succinct answer, and I'm going to interrupt people. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to get tough with you guys. So, Gavin, I know that you support this. What would your point be on this?
Well, I mean, what can I say? John's right. There is a very clear accountability. I think if you're looking at either 180 or a factory model, you end up in having to divide it up how you manage people much more. And so what you're going to have to do is have individual KPIs per type of job and then per person, much more than in a 360 model where you actually have, well, this is what we expect from a 360 recruiter, and then you only work on an individual level.
Fantastic.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Mike. Same to you.
Just come in on that if I can. You're absolutely right. There's more KPIs. So OCRs is what we use now. So we're very much OCR driven, output control, whatever they're called, right? So it's outputs that we're interested in. And there's only one or two usually per function within the factory. And so therefore there are more of them to measure, but because there are more of them to measure, you get a much more ingrained view of what your business is doing. And it makes diagnosis of problems so much easier because there's a function that's not doing what it should do. It's not hitting its OCRs. We know what that is. We dig into the data, we figure it out and we fix it. Whereas a 360, all we know is really that they're not hitting their numbers at the end of the month. Then I suppose we can dig a little deeper. Are they making enough telephone calls? Are they submitting enough CVs? I don't know, whatever. But
No. Stop, Mike. You can't say that. That you're basically saying that in 360 managers don't manage their people. What?
Oh, I can say I've worked in many recruitment companies and I agree with that statement. I have to say I've worked in many recruitment companies and managers are normally, in my experience, great billers who got promoted and all they care about is keeping their numbers high. And I'm trying to stay neutral here, but I have to jump in on that one. I'm sorry.
We all know
that's a different debate, though. That's a complete different debate. Because what you're basically talking about now is the quality of agency management.
Oh, we should have another show.
So what you're saying is that you say, oh yeah, but because the management is in general pretty crap, we should have a factory model.
No, it just means that you can make more money if you go to a factory, and all you've got to learn is, like I said, data management. You manage by data, you don't manage by proximity. A lot of traditional recruiters manage by proximity, i.e. they have to be with someone to kind of know what the hell's going on, and that's not scalable. I mean, that's the problem with it. It just isn't a scalable business, whereas a factory model is eminently scalable because everything is measured and everything is managed. And, you know, it just takes some time to switch people across. You have to become people that are managers or understand how business works. But then you're not going to scale your business anyway. Even if you're 360, if you don't get management, it's not going to work for you.
Okay, so on that, I would like to sort of jump in on that. Sorry, Gavin. One very quick question, because I really want to move. We've only got a little bit of time left, and we've got 2 more topics to cover. So very quickly,
50% of recruitment agencies in the UK are solo recruiters, and these are the last figures I saw. 81% of all recruitment agencies in the UK have less than 10 people working there.
Correct.
So we're talking about a very small percentage of the market.
No, au contraire, really. I mean, I'm just going through, and you know somebody is in our process at the moment, Kirsty, KS, and she's a solopreneur, and we're just basically breaking out certain bits of what she does now to make it so that she doesn't have to do everything. So we're starting to hire external resources abroad, level 1 resources in India. We'll get a level 1. She's already got a level 2 resourcer in the UK. There's a marketing function. So she's already building a factory, but there is only her in the business. It's ideal for solopreneurs, is what I would say. I mean, it would be my favorite choice, because you can have more of the freedom and you can achieve more without working as much, and you can make more money doing it. I mean, the money involved with a factory model at that level is significant. You can do the numbers yourself, actually. It all works out.
Okay, fantastic. Right. So on that, I do very briefly want to cover client care. We are possibly going to overrun, and I'm going to be super strict here. You get 1 comment each on client care, and then we're going to move on to scalability. You get 1 comment each. So Gavin, I'm going to come to you first. When it comes to client care, why is a 360 superior?
The huge advantage you've got is that you've got firsthand all the information about every single thing every single candidate has said that you've ever spoken to. And so it's not only the candidate, but it's also market knowledge. Whatever your hiring manager is going to say to you, everything's there. You can answer straight away. Whereas if you've got other people who have done all the sourcing, you're going to miss out on potentially quite a bit of information.
Okay, fantastic. Mike, to you now, factory model, client care. Why is it better?
Most 360s don't do client care terribly well, because client care is what you do with somebody when there's no work. And if there's no work, they're not interested, because they want to go where the work is, because that's how they make their money. They make their money at the end of the month by making placements. No work. Well, hey, know me. In a factory model, there is somebody that's job it is to manage relationships. They may do other things as well. They probably do, actually, in a smaller business, but they are trained, measured, and rewarded on the strength of the relationship with the clients. And that's where the really big money comes in. The stronger the relationships, the more that clients think you're there more than just to make money out of them, which in 360s, I mean, I would accept you. I'm sure you weren't like that, and I don't think I was like that, but a lot of them are. It's about the money, and everybody knows that. With client care, if it's done properly, the requirements come to them, not the other way around. They don't have to chase them. It's massively efficient.
Okay, fantastic. So I think that's a fairly succinct thing. I think depending on your point of view, it's going to be very difficult to change on that. So I think it works really well. Got a comment here from Russell. If managers are more focused on their own billing, then you are not incentivizing them on getting their earning out of developing others, which I think is back to people, but a very good question. Mike, I'm going to let you go first on this one.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely true. Every time you take someone on and have someone directly working for you, that should be 10% of your time as a minimum, between 5 and 15% of your time dedicated to management every single week. So in other words, if you get 10 people, all you do is manage. In often the cases with recruiters, and this isn't a factory or 360 debate really, it's just how the recruiters are, they hire people, but they still have to hit the original billing. Well, that's not going to fly. I think there should be a limit. If you've got people working for you, there's a limit to what you can bring in. So you can bring in what you like, but you only get paid up to that point. The rest of the money you must get by empowering and making your team work better. 100% agree with that one, Russell.
Okay, Gavin, how about you?
I agree with Russell. It's valid for both cases.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes left, and I want to briefly cover something that's very, very strong in the Mars show, which is scalability. And I want to talk about scalability on a 360 versus scalability on a factory. So, Mike, I'm going to let you go first on this one. Scalability factory model.
Okay, I'm going to use Gavin's numbers because I believe them to be pretty much true. It changes all the time. The vast majority of businesses never scale. The vast majority of businesses are 360. I think I'll just leave it at that.
Fine. Okay, Gavin, how would you like to respond?
Well, obviously the figures say that you need 360 more than you need the factory, but that's
they're not enlightened, Gavin. They're not enlightened. That's why they do the 360. They don't know better. Now they do.
Well, just like we've got bad agency managers, we've also got people who actually don't maybe want to take all the hassle on, and they want just a lifestyle kind of work, and so therefore they don't need anything more than that. What I'm actually much more concerned about is the people who are working in agencies and that are badly trained. And of course, the question was about scaling, and I think that my experience of scaling is, if you are going to put the effort in and really train and coach, you can't just train and let the people go, but really train and coach 360 people who have the potential to be 360 recruiters, you can actually scale much better. And if you do it in a small niche where you're all working in your same niche, you will get even better results.
Okay. All right.
Do you not think, though, that, I mean, like I did, I'm sure you did when you must have gone out on your own at some point, you suddenly realize I'm taking 40% of what I bring in. If I do it for myself, and I can do it for myself because I've been very kindly trained and given the opportunity to do the whole thing, I'll just go and do it myself then, which I did, and took a huge chunk, £40 million in the end, away from the business that I was with for my own business. Isn't that going to be the case for anybody that's any good at 360? Seriously.
No, because you're thinking like you or I think. But if you put yourself in the shoes of a lot of people are frightened of going out. This whole thing of you're an entrepreneur and you've got to talk to your bank and you're responsible for the bottom line. It freaks people out.
Well, that's not strictly true, though, because there's that growth in companies now that do all of that. They'll take 10% of what you bring in and they'll do everything for you. You just go and be fabulous, is the spiel. I'm not saying it's true or not, but that's the spiel. Added to that, though, with really good 360s, it's not just about going out on their own. Other companies spot them and want them, and there becomes a bidding war because they want the full package. There are so few of them out there that it's very easy to go and say, whatever you work in, I'll give you more because you're the real deal. So it's not just about going out on your own, although that's obviously one of the big things that people do if they're really good. It's also that they become a very, very attractive proposition for somebody else. Whereas if all you're buying is a function, and if they don't take the rest of the stuff with them, which they can't in a factory, particularly not the product and the tools, then they're going to go, but they're not really going to do any damage. Then they're never going to hurt you very much because there's nothing else to be around them in their new role.
So what you're selling is a solution to keep people in the agency that don't really want to be there. Congrats.
I think they stay there. The attrition rates tend to drop because people are doing what they like and they see a career path for them. They can develop themselves through these different spaces. And so they tend to stay longer, in my experience. I can't say that for everyone, obviously, but generally speaking, the turnover, the attrition rates are a lot less in a factory model.
Okay, guys, we're getting to the end of our time now. So what I want you to do is I want you to each give me a round off of why somebody watching this should pick 360. I think Gavin made a really strong point earlier, which was that depending on what your agency is and what you want from it, either can work. It just, they have different strong points and different strengths. And a lot of this is being sort of like comparing one to the other. But if ignoring that the other one exists, why should somebody pick your model? Okay, so Gavin, I'm going to come to you first. Why should somebody watching this pick 360?
Because you can get on a much easier way. You can be more effective and have higher revenue. As simple as that. Okay, fantastic. Mike?
Mine is, it's easier, cheaper, safer and more lucrative by a long chalk. And I suppose on top of that, you're just more in control of what's going on. And particularly if you are a small business, you can ship out the things that you don't like doing or that you don't want to do to give you a better lifestyle, a much better lifestyle, and make more money as a result from it. So no, I'm pretty convinced on the factory model, got to be honest.
I love it when people are still strong in their own beliefs at the end of a debate. Okay, we've got a couple of comments that I just wanted to bring up that we just kind of, that nice summary. So Russell said he's always grown 360 winning tech teams over the last 27 years, but now he's scaling more on a factory model because candidates are hard to find. And so hunters and gatherers did the same thing.
I'm with you on that one.
We've got Martin saying they're a business of 25 years. They use level 1 resources and level 2, but only in small numbers up to present. Key accounts are serviced and deliver 60% of their business. They're on their way to working a factory recruitment project, but how best to scale it up?
How best to scale it up?
How best to scale it up?
Yeah, drop me. Well, come to the webinar. Stick it back up, Kirsty. come to the webinar and I'll go through it in a lot more depth than we've got now. Sadly, it'll just be me and Kirsty and Pete, but and Gavin won't be there to give us a bit of a spark on the day. But I'll go through everything with you and explain. It's free and there's no fishiness to turn. You'd be fine. But I'll explain it in great detail.
Fantastic. So then we've got a very good comment here from John, which I think is the best way to end today's show. I suspect this date could rage on for a while. And I do believe that it is probably best for us to end on that. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you so much to Gavin today for being here. I think he's put a really good case forward for 360s. So thank you so much for being here, Gavin. It's really been a good time for me.
Can I echo that? I normally don't leap in at this point, but it's been such fun. I've really enjoyed it. You've been a great sport. And it's been really good to joust a little bit with you on this. So thank you for coming on the show, Gavin. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, fantastic. And Mike, thank you to you, our factory king. I think you've made a very good case for a factory, as I probably would. But thank you very much for being here.
Otherwise, you can go and work for Gavin. Clear off.
Yeah, Mike's just as old as his approach. Don't worry about it.
Fantastic. And once again, I'd like to say thank you for everybody for watching. Mike, before we go, who have we got next week up?
We've got another Lewis. He's the members only recruitment group. He's the founder and CEO, and we're going to be talking about 4 steps you can take to help you breathe through the recession. Now, this isn't about saying, oh well, if we talk about the recession, it's going to happen, and let's shove our heads up our asses and not talk about it. No, there's an acceptance that there's a downturn coming. What can you do to breathe through it, or maybe even do better through it? There's 4 things. We're going to debate those and talk about them and share them. So we hope to see you on the show next week.
Fantastic. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you there.